Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my Tuesday night astrology stream. My name is John, and I'm thrilled to have you here tonight for what I know is going to be an amazing chart. This is the chart of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Dwayne is a very interesting guy for a lot of reasons. When he first started back in show business, he was actually part of the WWE, and he's had an amazing career run since then. He's now a very well-known actor in feature films. He also has voiced he's voiced Maui and Moana. He's done so many awesome things, and he just seems like a pretty good guy. So he had a birthday recently, as you can see, on May 2nd. So he is a Taurus sun. We're going to take some time to talk about his chart tonight. As usual, if you have questions for me, I would be more than happy to try and answer them. No guarantees that I'll come up with a perfect answer, but I will give it my best shot. Okay, let's get started. As we normally do, we'll start with the rising sign. And Mr. Johnson is a rising Libra. Okay. So we've talked a lot about Libra on this channel. Libra is a sign that is ruled by the planet Venus. The rising sign is the way that you look at the world. I often think of it as a pair of glasses, but if you are a fan of Carl Jung, he referred to it as the persona. So you can think of it as it's not the same thing as you, but it's your perceptions, how you perceive life. And that has a lot to do with just how you look at the world and how others see you. Hello, Materlacrium. Yes, of course you came just to be a dick. Well done and welcome. Of course you did. In any case, glad to have you aboard, no matter what your intentions are. So let's talk about Libra a little bit more. Libra is a sign that likes to be agreeable. They want to please. They like partnerships. They're actually the sign that rules relationships as a whole. So this is a sign that wants to get along, wants other people to get along. So when you have Libra rising, you look at the world in a way that focuses on relationships, but also wants to be pleasant and wants other people to be pleasant, wants to avoid discord. Okay? Now, one other interesting thing about the rising sign that we haven't really talked about is that there are many astrologers that believe that our rising sign also determines what our bodies look like, that we have physical characteristics of the rising sign. And folks, I've actually seen it done where astrologers will look at a person's face and say, hey, I think this person looks like an X rising, and they're right. That's the scary part. So in the case of a Libra rising person, Libra rising people often have really beautiful bodies. And anyone who has seen the body of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you gotta believe that there's got to be something to this astrology rising sign stuff, because his body is incredibly gorgeous. And Libra rising people have a tendency to have bodies that are attractive and well-rounded. And his certainly is in all the right places. So keep that in mind too. There are whole books written on the topic if you're interested in it. It's not something that I've studied specifically, but I do know that there are a lot of astrologers who believe the rising sign does have an impact on how you are physically. And which makes sense, because the rising sign is your physical body, so it does make total sense. It's just not something I've studied as much. But when I saw that he had a Libra rising, I thought, yep, that's about right. But Mr. Johnson is a person who's going to want harmony around him. He's going to see the world through the eyes of creating relationships, especially one-to-one relationships. Now, we mentioned a moment ago, but he is a sun sign Taurus, so let's highlight that for you. Okay, so as you can see here, his sun is at 12 Taurus. Remember that each sign of the zodiac gets 30 degrees of real estate. So he was born on May 2nd. So it was almost, the sun was almost halfway through the sign of Taurus. The sun moves about 1 degree a day, as I've said on the channel before. So the sun was about almost 13 days into Taurus when he was born. So there you go. Now, one of the other interesting parts of this chart, and I put it up here so I wouldn't forget, is that if you look at connections in the chart, we often talk about aspects, right? Where a chart has connections to a given another planet in the chart or an angle in the chart. If you look at the sun, you're not going to see any. There are no planets connected to the sun in this chart. Not a one. And so this is a chart that has an unaspected sun. And we've talked about the unaspected sun before, but let's go over it again because it's an important thing. It's a subtle thing. If you haven't been studying astrology for very long, it's not the first thing you're going to see. Even in my studies, I only came at this 7 or 8 years ago to realize how important this was. And of course, I noticed it because it's in my own chart too, but there it is. So the unaspected sun means that the sun is not integrated into the chart. It is not connected to any other planet in the chart. So it's the maverick. Unaspected sun people can struggle because the sun sticks out, which means they stick out. And oftentimes when it comes to groups, clubs, organizations, etc., people who have unaspected sun, a lot of times they don't fit in. They don't fit in well to those groups. They feel like they're just not, it's not exactly right. From my own experience, I can tell you this is absolutely true. You join a group and you think, okay, well, this group's for me. And then after a while, you kind of notice, yeah, it kind of is and it kind of isn't. I'm kind of here, but I don't fit in as much as everybody else. And it can be frustrating because you think, well, where am I going to find my place? And I'm sure that Dwayne Johnson has gone through a lot of periods like this in his life. The answer to that for someone who is someone who has an unaspected sun is to create the spaces for yourself. If you create the space, then it's yours. And so as you think about that, and you think about the career of Dwayne Johnson, I mean, as I said, he's done everything from voiceover acting to acting in feature films to WWE and a whole host of other things. He created the space for himself. And as you may recall, if you've watched my Taylor Swift stream, which I'm still cutting up, by the way, and putting out his pieces, but if you've watched the stream, you know she has an unaspected sun also. These are people who are mavericks in their field, and they have to create the space for themselves. Okay? So yeah, unaspected sun, so that's a pretty big deal. What's really interesting is it really doesn't happen very often, but it seems like on this channel I've already had several people who have unaspected suns, and I guess I really shouldn't be surprised considering I have one too, and I'm married to somebody who also has one. So I guess that's what I'm attracting here on the channel. All right, so the sun in Taurus, let's talk about that briefly as well. The sun in Taurus, I like to call the sun in Taurus the hobbits of the zodiac. Now, I have a very close friend who will be very upset that I actually said that because she doesn't see herself that way at all. But I need to explain why, okay? When you go to a Taurus person's house, they want you to feel comfortable. If you go to a Taurus person's house, they're going to have food, they're going to have drinks, they're going to make sure you're comfortable, they're going to take care of you. You always want to go party at a Taurus person's house. You really do, because they know how to host. Remember that Taurus is a Venus-ruled sign. They want you happy, well-fed, and comfortable. That's what they want. And so to me, the idea of the Hobbit and how solicitous they are, how hospitable they are, it perfectly fits with the Taurus mindset. A lot of Taurus people are good singers too, because Taurus rules the throat. And so a lot of Taurus people, Barbara Streisand, Willie Nelson, Billy Joel, Stevie Wonder, a lot of people with the sun sign of Taurus have great singing voices, and very unique ones too at that. Okay, so you'll see that too. And when he sang in Moana, he did very well. Like, the guy has a voice, he can carry a tune. So I'm so glad that he had this, because it just makes him even better. It makes him even more of a threat as an actor, because he can also sing. Okay. Taurus people, on the negative side, Taurus people do have a tendency to be a little bit of hoarders or pack rats. You will often find them with a lot of their stuff around them. And the idea, folks, is that the stuff gives them security. Okay, they're the ones that always have the bag with them because they never know what they're going to need. They're the ones that don't really want to throw much away because they're afraid they might need it. But again, also because it represents security for them. It represents security. One True Cripple, thanks for joining us. The Taurus Sun is one also that absolutely 100% is probably the slowest in the zodiac. Now, don't take that the wrong way, Taurus folks. It's not intellectually slow. It means that Taurus people have one speed, and that one speed is slow. If you try to rush a Taurus person, all they're going to do is dig in their heels. Don't even bother. I also will tell you that with Taurus folks, they know what they want, and generally speaking, if they don't ask for advice, I wouldn't give it, because it needs to be their idea. If you want a Taurus person to do something, you have to plant the seed and walk away and hope that it takes root. They're not going to just accept something you say as soon as you say it. And they're not going to act on it right away either. For Taurus people, it's about time. It takes them time to do things. They're never in a rush. Almost never. I used to mess with my Taurus supervisor in my government job by going into her office and acting like there was something on fire, or we had to do something that wasn't exactly real, or give her a deadline that was really short, and it would really freak her out. And then I'd go, "No, I was just kidding. It's not due for 2 weeks." I know that was probably pretty cruel of me, but I definitely used to do that to her all the time. Just because it was really fun to see her lose her groovy cool just for a second. Okay, Taurus folks move slowly and cautiously, and they're not rushed. One other final thing: Taurus people hate surprises. This is not a person that you want to spring a road trip on, or bring a whole bunch of people over to sing happy birthday to them on their birthday without letting them know. They need a lot of runway to handle things. So just make sure that you are informing them. Yeah, it's not that great all the time because you do like to surprise people. I'm a Scorpio. I love to surprise people. But with Taurus, it's not typically going to go well. So I give you that warning. I give you that information. And as usual, my advice is this: you do with that what you will. You may find you have a Taurus person in your life who desperately needs to be confused. And if so, have at it. Just remember that I'm not responsible. Okay. So that's the Sun in Taurus. Now, he has the Sun in Taurus in the 7th house, which actually reinforces the Libra rising a bit, because the 7th house rules relationships and his Sun is sitting in it. So this is a person who, yes, he's going to see the world through the eyes of relationships, but even more so, he's going to gravitate toward them because he has the Sun in the 7th house. And that's when he's at his best. Okay? And you need to look at it for yourself. Look at the movies he's done. and look at the movies when he's paired with somebody else. When he's paired with somebody else, it seems like he's even better than he normally is. He's a great actor, don't get me wrong, but just look, because this astrology stuff does have something to do with it. Remember that acting is also a Venus-based career path too. Okay? Just watch. You decide, you're going to decide, but I believe that his best roles are the roles that he does with someone else, where there are two of them. Okay. All right, moving forward, let's look at the moon next. All right. We have, ladies and gentlemen, a Capricorn moon. Okay. Capricorn moon is a difficult moon position. It's the moon in detriment. Okay. When a planet is in detriment, it starts about 2 lengths behind everybody else. Now, this is not a problem unless you allow it to be. One of the best things about planets in detriment is that you have the opportunity to work on them and make them better. You're not stuck with them. The moon in Capricorn is what I call Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam because the moon is like a river and Hoover Dam holds everything back. For a Capricorn moon person to be successful, they have to have a safe space to let those emotions out a little bit at a time so they don't become overwhelmed. Capricorn moon people who don't do that, well, their emotions are going to come out in a place that they really don't want, because Capricorn moon folks don't want to show the world how emotional they really are. And so most of the time, they keep it all hidden. I almost think of this like the British military officer, stiff upper lip, like, okay, it doesn't really matter. I might be bleeding out the eyeballs, but I'm okay. It's fine. It's fine. A lot of Capricorn moon people will not ask for help, especially emotional help, because they feel like it makes them look weak. Okay, this is pretty standard. Now, I also have Capricorn moon, and for many years I worked on not being as severe and cold, because the Capricorn moon can be very, very cold. Now, I got to tell you, it worked super well and does work super well as I substitute teach in middle school, because I can be a hard ass. I really can, and I can really come down on people when it needs to happen. But I try to do so now with more warmth than before. And it's taken a while for me to get there. But again, the moon in detriment, any planet in detriment, is not a life sentence. You can choose to work on the planet. And the great thing about that is that you will make more progress than people who are naturally more sensitive with their moon placement. Because it's like being talented or having to work at it. If you got to work at it, you can do so much better than you ever dreamed. If you're talented, you're not forced to work on it. So think about that. Planets in detriment really force you to work on things. And if you're talented, that's good. I mean, I have no issue with people who have Cancer moon placements. They're very intuitive, they're very sensitive, they're good at nurturing, like they're good naturally at all those things. I was not, so I had to work at it. But that's okay. The Rock has the same thing as me. He has a Capricorn moon. And that Capricorn moon, as I said, can be challenging. But it also means that likely if he wants to be intimidating, which, I mean, if you look at him, his body alone, right, is fairly intimidating. But when he comes across with that very intimidating, I won't take any crap demeanor, you see it. And Capricorn moon can really help with that. A lot of famous folks have Capricorn moon. George Patton had a Capricorn moon. You're talking about Abraham Lincoln had a Capricorn moon. Gandhi had a Capricorn moon. All of these famous leaders that have had Capricorn moon, because they've had to tell people to do things that are really risky and knew were going to cost lives. That didn't make them insensitive, but it meant that in the moment they put the mission first. And that's another term I like to use for Capricorn moon, is mission first. They know how to do the job and deal with the emotion later. The key is that we have to deal with the emotion later, or else it's going to overwhelm us just like it would anybody else. He also has the moon in the 3rd house, The third house of astrology often deals with siblings, but it also deals with neighborhoods, the people who are around us, our relatives. Okay, so he may be especially sensitive to where he lives. Now, he moved across country a number of times. I know he graduated from high school in Hawaii, but he's lived in Connecticut and he's lived in several other places over his life. And when you have the moon in the third, there can be this tendency to want to be comfortable wherever your neighborhood is. And hopefully that really helped him out in this particular case. I do have to check his bio and see if he has brothers and sisters, but if he does, likely he does quite well with them. Okay. Okay, we'll go to Mercury next. Mercury is our chief communications officer, folks. And Mercury's job is communication, memory, problem solving, and logic. He is the way that we express ourselves. He also is how we learn, how we comprehend things. Now here we have Mercury in Aries. Okay, Aries is a sign that wants immediate action. And so when we see Mercury in Aries, I call it automatic mouth, or open mouth insert foot is another way I would say it. Because sometimes with Aries, the brain is not, the mouth says it before the brain's actually engaged. This is especially true when the person is pissed off. You could definitely see some Mercury in Aries people let loose. Now, just as a reminder, Mercury can only be 28 degrees from the sun, right? So here's the sun. And Mercury is about as far away from the sun as it can be. Almost exactly 28 degrees. It's a little bit less, okay? But at this point, remember that if you talk to somebody and you know that their sun is in a given sign, then you know that their Mercury is either in the sign before it, the sign the sun is in, or the sign after it. There are no other options. Okay? There has to be no more than 28 degrees. That's not even a full sun sign, folks. That's not even a full sign. So something to keep in mind as you're looking at charts. You're always going to find Mercury floating around close to the sun. In this case, Mercury in Aries also represents someone who learns quickly. But that doesn't mean they retain it. This is someone who might say, oh, I totally understand that. Yep, I get it. And then an hour later might go, what was that again? Did I not? So the processing is quick, but the retention isn't necessarily there all the time. Now, to reinforce this idea of relationships, I want to show you where Mercury is. Mercury is within 3 degrees of the descendant. Now, we've talked about the ascendant, the rising sign being the persona and the physical body. The descendant represents the cusp of the 7th house in the house system I use, which means that you are looking for the qualities of the sign, on the cusp. In this case, we're looking at Aries. And so when you have Mercury that's that close to the descendant, it tells me a few things. One, it tells me that communication in relationships is going to be absolutely vital. 2, it says that when this person is looking for relationships, they're looking for people to match them intellectually. This is a person who wants to understand the other person intellectually as well. So when we have Mercury close to the ascendant like that, that's kind of what I would expect to see. But again, Aries is a quick sign, wants quick resolution, wants quick action. And when you have Mercury in that sign, they learn quick but might not retain, but they are quick to say what's on their minds, which can also be very helpful. All right. Earlier we discussed the fact that we have Venus, which is the ruling planet of the chart. We know this because we have Libra rising, and Venus is the ruling planet of Libra. So that's how we know. So we have Venus in Gemini. All right. Venus in Gemini is a sign, is a planet. Remember Venus is about values, right? Venus's job is to tell us what we want. That's her job. And when you have Venus in Gemini, you want cerebral stimulation. You want to talk. You want to gossip. You want people who are intelligent. Likely, a lot of folks with Venus in Gemini are sapiosexual. They find intelligence attractive. Okay? Venus in Gemini wants information more than anything else. They crave it. They go for it. That's what they want. And Venus in Gemini, when it comes to love, that can be a little bit more of a challenge. Let me explain. Because Venus is a sign that is double-bodied, okay? It's the twins. And the old joke with Gemini, sorry, Amy, my apologies. I'm sure I have a very, very close friend who's like a sister to me, and she says I always make fun of Gemini. And to be fair, I make fun of all the signs, but whenever I make fun of Gemini, she's a sun sign Gemini, and she gets upset. But that's okay. Gemini is a sign that is double-bodied, which means you don't always know who's going to show up, right? With Venus in Gemini, what you want will likely change frequently. And when it comes to long-term relationships especially, if Venus in Gemini does not have intellectual stimulation, they're not going to be in that relationship for too long. That's just pretty standard. They need someone who can carry their end of a conversation. If that's not happening, then it's unlikely a Venus in Gemini is going to have a long-term relationship with that person. Now we also have Venus in the 9th. So there is a connection between the rising sign and the 9th house because the ruling planet, Venus, is in the 9th house. The 9th house is about college education. The 9th house is about philosophy and spirituality and ethical matters. The 9th house is about anything that is foreign. Foreign cultures, foreign people, foreign language, foreign trade, anything like that. So likely, these are things that the rock would gravitate toward. Okay? A lot of times people with planets in the 9th house, and we're going to talk about Mars, which is there in a moment. A lot of times when people who have planets in the 9th house gravitate toward spirituality and anything involving the metaphysical for that reason, because the 9th house deals with that. And for some of us who have 9th house planets, that would be me. I have a 9th house sun. Some of us who have 9th house planets become members of the clergy, appropriately enough. In my case also, I was a foreign language major, so I have a lot of the 9th house archetypes, and I have the sun there. But when you have Venus there, you're going to be attracted to people who are spiritual, who make you question things, who are philosophical. Those are the kinds of people you're going to be interested in, as well as people who are just plain old smart. Okay. Now, if you've watched this channel for more than, 10 minutes, you've heard me talk about Venus and Venus's job, right? So we know Venus's job is our values. Okay? What's important to us? And she does that job very well. Okay? But Venus is not a planet that works. She sits there on the couch with her drink and snack and perhaps an iPad or a phone, and she just tells you what you want. She doesn't work for it. She doesn't tell you how you're going to get it. She says, this is what's important to you. Mars and Venus work together. And Mars happens to be right next to her. They are close enough that they form in astrology what we call a conjunction. Mars's job is to go get what Venus asks for. She says, you want this? Mars says, I go get. Mars is the metaphorical Bam Bam from the Flintstones. I take my club, I go hit things, I accomplish my objectives. I get shit done. That's his job. Now, unfortunately, in this particular case, Mars is not smart. I often consider him the dumb jock of the astrological world. He is important, but he doesn't think. His job is to go get stuff done and protect you. He's like your SWAT team. Heaven forbid you get into a physical altercation, Mars will take over. When you have Mars in Gemini, like the Rock does, your focus is going to be on flexibility. We often call Mars in Gemini rude, crude, and inappropriate because they can use a language that is very blunt, that's the Gemini piece, to cause or resolve conflict, which is the Mars piece. So this is not a Mars position that always wants to have a physical fight or get involved in conflict, but they know how to use language to either start conflict or end it. Once again, in the 9th house of philosophy and higher education and the higher mind and spirituality. But more importantly than that, we have Mars and Venus conjunct. When these two planets are together, I call this love me or hate me. Because people are going to be very attracted to Dwayne Johnson, or they're going to be completely repelled by him. When you have Mars and Venus sitting in the same sign, right next to each other like this, and they're conjunct, again, they're within a degree and a half in this case, you're going to feel like there are some people that you're just not going to get to like you, but there are some people who are always going to be by your side, who are always going to support you. That's just how it goes. So, love me or hate me with Mars and Venus. Okay. All right, as we move on, we have Jupiter down here by the moon. Jupiter in Capricorn. And Jupiter's job is to expand. He's about growth. Now, when Jupiter is in Capricorn, he's not particularly happy there because Capricorn is a sign that is ruled by his arch rival, Saturn. Okay? And Jupiter wants to expand, and Jupiter in Capricorn constantly says, whoa, it's going to take time. You're going to expand, but you have to look at this long term. There's no big break. There's no, it's constant. It's constant work. It's slow, methodical, organized expansion. Okay, that's the kind of expansion we're talking about. And you have to have a super amount of patience for this. And as we've said before, The Rock has very much grown over time in his career, and his growth has been slow. He didn't become a star overnight. And Jupiter in Capricorn really exemplifies this. Now, one of the other things I will say is that because we have Jupiter in the 3rd house, the 3rd house is about K through 12 education. And so, when we're talking about Jupiter sitting in that house, high school is when he likely started to really blossom. People really started to notice him. Literally Jupiter is growth, so that's likely when he hit a major growth spurt. Now, when we're talking about the polar opposite of Jupiter, we're talking about Saturn. Remember that Jupiter over here is the planet of YOLO. Eat more, drink more, play more. Just put it on a credit card. Who cares? You only live once. Go to it. Enjoy. Saturn is not like that. Saturn's job is boundaries. His job is keeping us on the straight and narrow. His job is telling us not yet, or flat out no. you don't have time, you don't have money, you don't have energy. He can be a real stick in the mud because he is trying to help us get better, but he needs to do it slowly over time. Okay? Saturn has never lost. Okay? He's Father Time. No one's going to beat him. So when we're looking at Saturn, and we're looking at Saturn in Gemini, one of the real benefits to having Saturn in Gemini is flexibility. Now, what's interesting enough is that The Rock was born about 6 months after I was. So he has Saturn in the same sign that I do. And Saturn in Gemini is great for focusing on repeated tasks, especially those that involve words. Like, I don't know, teaching. Saturn in Gemini is very good at making sure that they write well and they speak well, but they're flexible enough to be able to do so in a lot of different situations. Saturn in Gemini's brains are good at organizing information and cataloging it for the long term. I think my whole world exploded when I found Microsoft OneNote, because I realized that that was a tool that I was probably going to use for the rest of my life. Okay? But organization, mind organization, is a big part of Saturn in Gemini. Now it's here in the 8th house. The 8th house is our helping healing house. So likely, The Rock wants to use his discipline. He wants to use his speaking ability. He wants to use his ability to write and communicate to help people. He wants to do that. He feels an obligation. Saturn is the planet of obligation. He probably feels a strong obligation to help, which is nice. All right, let's look at Uranus next. Uranus is also in Libra. As a reminder, for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who do know, Uranus is the planet that has an 84-year cycle. So it changes signs about once every 7 years. So if you look at where Uranus is, in this case it's 15 Libra, okay? Uranus was about halfway through Libra when The Rock was born. And again, because I have a birth date that's close to his, my Uranus is at the same degree. I think it's still at 15 Libra. Uranus's job is to take stagnant energy and shake it up. He is the electricity of planets. He's the Red Bull of planets. He's the light bringer. He breaks things so that you need to pay attention to them and fix them, especially things that are stagnant or not working anymore. Uranus is also a planet that often comes up involving accidents as well as divorce. Now, you may have heard me say in the past that Mars is also an accidents planet, and that's absolutely true, but Uranus is as well. We will often see Uranus come along and enter someone's chart in a particular house or across a particular angle before a really big shakeup occurs. Now, what is really interesting for both Dwayne Johnson and myself, because we have Saturn in about the same place, is that Uranus right now is in the very early degrees of Gemini. So that means that both of us will be experiencing a Uranus conjunction with our natal Saturn, and that's going to happen in August. So what would that mean for him on a day-to-day level? Well, it could mean that there's a big shakeup coming for his career. I'm already starting to see that with mine. Okay? Uranus also represents the internet and everything involved with the internet and social media. I am lucky that I'm seeing a lot of growth in my social media accounts. I'm not really surprised because I've got Uranus coming to my Saturn. Saturn is a career planet. Okay? I would not be surprised at all if he had some big changes coming this year, career-wise, or that he was out in the public eye online a lot more than he normally is. I could see that as well. If you are having relationship troubles and Uranus enters the picture, likely there's a big change that's going to happen. We often, as I said, we often call it the planet of divorce, so it comes to shake things up in that area. But of course, if you're not married, it could also be just a plain old breakup or a complete shifting in what the relationship is like or how it works. But Uranus next to the ascendant also deserves a little bit of a mention because it's only 4 degrees from the ascendant. When you have Uranus next to your ascendant, likely you don't want to sit down. Okay, you don't want to be idle. You don't want to be sedentary often. You want to get up, you want to do things. Okay, this is not a chart of somebody that I would say, oh, you'd be perfect for an office job. Nope, not at all. This is someone who needs to be in pretty constant motion, who is ready for things to change a lot on a given day, because Uranus is the planet of the unconventional. Uranian people don't want routine. They want different. They want innovative. They want cutting edge. They want progressive. They don't want the same old, same old. Okay, so when you have Uranus close to your rising sign like this, you would expect that the person might be fidgety or might show an interest in activities where there's a lot of change or excitement. This is a person who might want a lot of excitement in their work. I'm sure that's one of the reasons why Dwayne Johnson likes acting, is because it's a little different every day. But the position of Uranus in this chart is important because it's within a few degrees of the rising sign. The rule that I use is 5. If you have a planet within 5 degrees of any of those angles, ascendant, descendant, midheaven, or nadir, any of them, right? We're talking within 5 degrees of here, 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 or here, any of those, then that's a planet that's going to get attention. That's just how it is. It's one that jumps right out at you as an astrologer. If he were my client, Uranus was probably the first planet I would ask about and find out how that manifests in his life, because I'm sure it does. All right. Let's take a look at Neptune. All right, we've got Neptune over here in the second. Neptune takes about 13 or 14 years or so to go through a sign. So when Dwayne Johnson was born, it was only a little bit. Neptune was only a few degrees into Sagittarius. Neptune is an important planet for actors because Neptune is the planet of fantasy. Neptune is the planet of roles, role play, and costumes. Okay, we've talked about Neptune being important for somebody like Alicia Liu, who is an athlete. Okay, we've seen it a lot and prominently in the charts of people like Taylor Swift and Ryan Gosling. Like people like that, Neptune is going to be important. And Neptune in Sagittarius is really a generational marker. So when I look at this, I'm looking more at the house than I am at the sign. When you have Neptune in the second house, this is really interesting financially because Neptune often hides things. Neptune obscures things, okay? I mean, it's pretty easy to say that we've all gone through money difficulties at some point, but when you have Neptune natally in the second house, there are a couple of things I would be looking for. One, I would be wondering how much effort, money, time is given to other people, because Neptune is a very self-sacrificing planet, Neptune can go victim martyr also. And if I had a lot of money and someone had Neptune in the second, I would say be very careful of who you give your money to or who you invest in, who you're supporting. That would be a big question I would have. But this is also someone who can earn a living through a Neptune-related activity, which he does. Okay? Think about wrestling. Okay, it's acting, but it's fantasy. It's fake. Neptune is the illusion. Okay, wrestling, the WWE, that's an illusion. It's an entertainment illusion. When you see a play and you see costumes, when you see a movie that seems to be completely unbelievable and does not fit with reality, that's Neptune. Neptune wants you to believe what you're being shown, even if it's not the truth. That isn't always a bad thing. Okay? We've all gone to a movie where we've said, that would never happen in real life, but man, that was a fun movie. That's Neptune right there. Okay? So as you look at this can indicate a person who can use Neptune to make money, because the second house is about money and finances. Now, we can also talk about the second house being our emotional security as well. With Neptune there, I would be asking Dwayne Johnson if he felt overwhelmed emotionally often. I could potentially see depression here as a possibility. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV, but I would ask him if it was something he was prone to. And I could definitely see that. All right, let's look at Pluto. Once again, we have Pluto listed as a generational planet, and it's in the 12th house. Okay, so we have Pluto in Virgo. Now notice the degree of Pluto that we're talking about here. When I was born in October of 1971, I had Libra. I had Pluto in Libra. It had just gone into Libra. But by May of 1972, it had gone backward. It had gone retrograde into Virgo. Okay? So technically, Dwayne Johnson and I are of two different generations, even though I was born before him. Because with astrologers, we're always looking at Pluto to kind of define the generation. So he came very late in his, I came very early in mine. Now, when I see Pluto, I'm reminded of the planet of transformation and change. That's his job. He comes along slowly and changes things around us. As he does so, he basically says, everything is temporary. So enjoy it while it lasts, but know it's not going to be forever. I also call him the astrological trash man. Because when he comes along and things leave our lives, things are taken from us, likely he's in some way he's responsible. The key with Pluto is not to hold on to it. If it's leaving our lives, we have to let it go. I can say that as a human being, there are times when I truly suck at that. There are relationships, there are friendships, there are jobs, there are situations we want them to continue, and Pluto says, nope, you don't need them anymore. When he says that, as humans, we want to hang on. We want to grab harder, and we can't do it. In this particular case, Pluto is in the very sensitive 12th house. The 12th house is about the subconscious mind. The 12th house is about how we deal with things that are underneath the surface. So when it comes to power and control, Dwayne Johnson is not a controlling person. He wants to not show that side of him right away. Okay? He doesn't feel that he needs to. The 12th house is where we hide things. So it's very easy if we have a planet here to act like that planet doesn't exist. even if it does. Now, what makes Pluto particularly interesting in this chart is the connections. And I'm going to show you this on the larger screen here. So this is called a T-square. A T-square is when you have one planet that is the focal point, and in this case, it's Pluto. And we have two other planets that form what we call the legs. The legs make a 90-degree angle to the focal point. Okay, so we have Mars and Venus, that Mars-Venus conjunction we talked about earlier, that is pushing in on Pluto. We also have the moon, that is the other leg that's pushing in on Pluto. That's a challenging position to be in. Now, a T-square is not that uncommon, but it can be difficult because it puts a lot of pressure on the focal point. And in this case, the focal point is the power and control. Okay, it is Pluto. And when we're dealing with Mars and Venus together and the moon pushing inward, remember the moon is our emotional, right? Our emotional body. And Mars and Venus are our masculine and feminine principles. Okay, Venus being our values, Mars being how we deal with conflict, how we fight, etc. And all of that is pushing in on Pluto. The challenge is that because Pluto also is in the 12th house, it may make someone like Dwayne Johnson not want to exercise his power because he's got all that pressure coming in on it. The great thing about the T-square is that there is an outlet for the energy. It's not just Pluto getting bombarded. There's a way that you can deal with it. And the release valve is right across the way here. So if you can imagine, this is one leg. This is the other leg, right? This is the moon and Venus, Mars opposed. This is the outlet. So what we're looking for is release right here into the 6th house. So what's the release for Dwayne Johnson? The release is the 6th house of wellness. So staying in shape, nutrition, day-to-day work and routines. In other words, the more routines he has, the better he'll do. The 6th house also is about responsibilities, so people that we are responsible to and people that we are responsible for. Okay, if he focuses on those things, he'll do well. Also, the 6th house is the body-mind connection. So if he doesn't meditate or have some kind of spiritual practice like that, I'd be very surprised, because usually when you see that outlet in the 6th house like that, usually someone has figured out that this is a really good time to really focus in on that body-mind connection so that they can stay focused on what's really important to them. So yeah, he has a T-square. The big part of this that I want you to think about and consider is that even though there is a lot of pressure on Pluto and it's in the 12th, which might make Dwayne Johnson not want to exercise his power, there still is an outlet for the energy which is there in the 6th house. And so if you have a T-square, you always want to look for the outlet. Where's the outlet? And if you focus your energy there, it can help deal with the very challenging T-square like he has in this chart. Also, statistically speaking, 4 of the 10 planets in this chart, 40% of them, are involved in that T-square. That's a lot. In some cases, it's even more. In some cases, it's 5 or 6 if the planets are part of a stellium or they're conjunct other planets as far as the legs go. Okay. So there you go. Okay, before we go, a couple of final thoughts. Earlier, I did not mention it. Normally, I do the elemental balance first, but tonight I've left it to last, mainly because I forgot. But Dwayne Johnson has no water in his chart, meaning that emotions probably do not come easy to him. Now, if we put that together with the Capricorn moon that we talked about earlier, right? That moon, that's Hoover Dam, right? That holds all the energy back. It would be exceptionally important for someone like him to work on his emotional body. It would be very, very easy to become cold and aloof or unemotional or harsh. And so for someone like him, it would be absolutely vital to work on the emotional side of things, on the intuitive side of things, work on sensitivity. That would be important. But yeah, he has a void in water. The other 3 elements are fine. He's got 4 air, he's got 4 earth, he's got 2 fire. He's good on the others. But he has no water at all, so he is a water void. The other one I wanted to mention to you is this one. So we've talked about the fact that every sign of the zodiac has both a quality, right, cardinal, fixed, or mutable, and an element, fire, earth, air, or water. In this particular chart, Dwayne Johnson has a singleton fixed planet. And what's interesting is that singleton fixed planet is the sun in Taurus. So if we didn't know to pay attention to the sun in Taurus before, the sun in Taurus is his only fixed planet. Earlier when I was talking about Taurus people digging their heels in, and generally they do, Dwayne Johnson probably does that a lot less than most other Taurus people because he's only got one fixed planet in the chart, and that Taurus sun is it. If I look below that, he has 5 planets in mutable signs. That's his greatest number of planets. Mutability is changeability, flexibility. Okay? He is probably quite adaptable. He's probably much more go with the flow than a lot of your standard Taurus folks. Because he has so much mutability in his chart. Half of his planets are mutable signs. Remember that mutable signs are flexible and adaptable because they come at the end of a season, folks. They transition from one season to another. Gemini transitions from spring into summer. Virgo transitions from summer into fall. Okay? Then you've got Sagittarius, which goes fall into winter. And then you've got Pisces, which transitions from winter into spring. Okay, so all of your mutable signs come at the end of a season. There's a reason for that. The amount of mutability in this chart would tell me that Dwayne Johnson likely is not your standard stubborn Taurus. He likely is a lot less so than most. All right. We are almost out of time, folks. I'd like to thank you as always for joining me. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them, and I'll just leave the channel open for a minute. Okay, hearing none, again, thank you so much for joining me tonight for the Twitch stream. I sincerely appreciate you stopping by and spending part of your evening with me. Next week, we're going to be doing the chart of Kevin Hart, one of The Rock's partners in crimes in film. I figured that would be appropriate to do Kevin right after Dwayne Johnson. Incidentally, Kevin Hart is a Cancer, and I took a quick look at his chart already, and it looks like it's going to be a fun one. So I hope you will join me next Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, as usual, for my Twitch stream. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great night. Enjoy.